Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys have your snacks ready for today's video. Before we start, I just want to say that in the last few videos that I have put out, I have received some really sweet comments. So I just want to say thank you guys for watching and leaving those comments. I really do appreciate it and it means a lot to me. It's pretty nerve-wracking when you're making videos and you put them out on the internet for pretty much anyone to watch, anyone to comment whatever they want, good or bad. So I am just glad that everyone has been pretty sweet, very nice, and yeah, I just hope that you continue to watch and to enjoy the videos. That's pretty much all I want. I just want to put out videos that are spooky, that are cozy, that just kind of feel like you're hanging out with a friend. And yeah, you're just having a good time talking about spooky stuff. That's kind of like the vibe that I want. So if that's the vibe that you're getting, I am glad. Without any further ado, let's just go ahead and get started on today's video and get your snacks ready. I just have some water for today. This ghost story isn't really mine, but it starts with me. Years ago, back when I was younger and in better shape, I used to go backpacking. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I just had a hard time saying that. Nothing terribly ambitious, but every so often I'd find a loop trail that could be done in a few days, get a friend and head out. One weekend, my friend Kristen and I went to southeastern Ohio to backpack, a 4 to 15 mile loop trail. It was great, very wooded, moderately strenuous, not too many other people. There were some signs of past human habitation along the way. A broken down shack, a little old schoolhouse, that sort of thing. We did it in 2 days, camping about halfway along the trail. I noticed though that on our way out, just a few miles from the trailhead, there was a beautiful spot to camp if you had time to make it a 3-day trip. There was just enough room for a single campsite right on the edge of the ravine, with a smoothed out place for a tent and a stone fire ring already in place. Once I got home, I told my roommate at the time, my cousin Shelly, about the trail, including the pretty second night campsite. A year or so later, Shelly's half-sister Emma came to visit, and they decided to backpack at the same loop trail. They, however, decided to make it a 3-day trip and spend the second night at the campsite that I told Shelly about. I only found out what happened that night. No one volunteered the information when Shelly overheard me talking about the trail to some other friends, and she laughed and said, "Yeah, Emma says she's never hiking that trail ever again." When I, surprised, asked what had happened, this is what Shelly told me. Apparently, during the second night, in the absolute darkness that you can only get when sleeping out in the woods, Emma awoke to the sound of a woman screaming right outside the tent. She was petrified and lay huddled in her sleeping bag, listening to the sound of screams until they finally faded away. Then she fell asleep again until she, sort of, woke up and opened her eyes and looked through the shadowy, barely there early lights at the front of the tent, towards the tent's door. There was a little girl crouched there, looking at her, whispering, "Don't wake up, don't wake up." The little girl faded and Emma pulled her hat down over her head and scrunched up in her sleeping bag until Shelly woke up, having slept the night through quite well, and they could get out of there. So how many of you guys like to go hiking and just go into the woods, camping out, all of that? I have only ever been camping once, and I think I was like 10 years old. It was a church thing. I mean, I had a great time, but as an adult, I have not been. I would love to, I just haven't been. I do hear that a lot of creepy stuff does happen to people when they're out in the woods by themselves. If you guys have any stories about that, let me know. You guys already know I love to hear about stuff like that. All right, next story, guys. Growing up, my parents added onto our house and my bedroom was the only one upstairs. My sister and I shared a room at one point and are still to this day extraordinary close, so it wasn't uncommon for her to wander into my room and sleep in my bed or vice versa. I woke up in the middle of the night one time to see a hand scrabbling around between the edge of the bed and the wall. I immediately assumed that my sister had slept in my bed and had fallen off the edge. The hand was grasping the side of the bed and reached like it was trying to grab something desperately, in a blind panic. Thinking my sister needed help, I looked over the edge of the bed and there was nothing there. I scurried down the stairs and slept in my sister's room that night, where she was sleeping peacefully without incident. That is very scary. I really thought that she was going to say that she reached out her hand to like help her, and yeah, I'm glad she didn't. Okay, moving on. My first boyfriend was so handsome and smart and maybe one of the funniest people I've ever met. He loved telling stories, and one day he told me that a spirit would enter his body. I passed it off as him trying to make up a spooky story to entertain me, and I played along. We all played along. When the spirit was in his body, he said that he had some sort of library where he could read about his history and future. There were times that the spirit would supposedly speak to him or his other friends, and it was like engaging with a different personality. We all played it off as a friend being a weirdo, and it was an engaging ruse. We didn't know to take it seriously, and we never said a word to his parents. This went on for several months. One day, the spirit speaking through my friend told me specifically that my friend was going to die in an accident, sudden impact, that he was trying to help him enjoy his short life as much as possible because the future was inevitable. I was so angry by this call, it felt like it was all going too far. Eventually, I broke up with him. A few months later, I was having a slumber party. We girls got into some stolen tequila and I blacked out around 10 o'clock. The girl said I was yelling something about, "Why is this happening?" I don't remember a bit, and I never touched tequila again. When we all woke up the next day and some girls had gone home, we soon found out that my now ex-boyfriend was struck and killed by a drunk driver the night before, as he was bicycling to a friend's house. We had to see his mangled bike on the evening news, the same bike that he used to ride over to my house. I don't know if my friend had a personality disorder, and if this was all a sick coincidence, but I really feel like it wasn't. I've never made peace with this. None of us reached out to our friend's family to raise concerns, and we will never know what was going on or if that one night could have been prevented. How in the hell can you prevent a random accident? I miss my friend. I wish I did more. This has haunted me for decades and probably will for my whole life. What the hell? I wonder what that was. What are we thinking that was? I don't know. Do you guys think it was a coincidence? Not a coincidence? What do you guys think it was? Let me know. Okay, so next story. My fiance and I met in Washington, D.C. area, and after being together for about a year, we moved from the city to the nearby suburb of Rockville, Maryland. It was a strange feeling house, even if you're not particularly woo-woo or believe in vibes. Woo-woo. It had a tendency to just attract crazy. One of the upstairs tenants was a painfully shy and awkward man who worked at the library and looked like the caricature idea of a serial killer. He had been living there since before my mother-in-law owned the building, and sometimes when he was drinking heavily late at night, which was most nights, he would pace back and forth loudly and yell. He was unwell to say the least. More than once, a mentally ill, homeless person showed up at the front door of the building, insisting that they either lived there or wanted to rent an apartment. The historic district of Rockville was a nice part of town in which you almost never saw people living on the streets, so it was even stranger. A lot of creepy shit happened in the building and a number of things in our apartment in particular. My fiance's cigarettes were inexplicably hidden from him a number of times, once on top of the fridge. The radio in our kitchen would frequently get turned on or off, despite having a manual dial that had to be cranked to the side and clicked in order to power it on or off. A random smiley face that looked like it either been drawn by a finger showed up once on the medicine cabinet mirror when we were taking a shower. Fiance woke up in the middle of the night once and asked me why there was a Confederate soldier walking through our bedroom. A couple of times the smell of sulfur would come from the non-functioning fireplace in our bedroom. Twice the smell of sickly sweet perfume that I can only describe as eau de grandma, eau de grandma, oh my god, eau de grandma, eau de grandma. I don't know. I have never taken French in my life. I don't know. You guys know what I'm saying, right? Perfume smell like grandma is what she's trying to say. You couldn't smell it in the hallway outside of our door or anywhere else in the apartment. While at home alone, a few times I heard a distinctive and animalian growling coming from one of the corners of the ceiling in the living room, but saw nothing. My dogs would lose their shit and bark at the area of the noise until they began shaking and curling up with me. One morning, we woke up and walked into the kitchen to find a drinking glass sitting in the center of the floor. The glass had previously been sitting in the sink, so it was a bit puzzling. It was sitting upright, and as we moved closer to it, we found that it looked as if someone had taken a bite out of it and then neatly placed the shards inside of the glass. There was not a speck or splinter of glass anywhere in the floor around it. The other side of the glass had 3 long scratches in it. I didn't want to touch it, and I didn't want my fiance to touch it either. So I picked it up with a plastic bag around my hand like it was a pile of dog crap and took it to the outside trash cans. A couple of days later, a branch from a large tree over the carport where the trash cans were fell onto the carport and almost nailed one of the building's residents. If we burned candles in our bedroom, for some reason they would burn so high and hot that it made the room unbearable to be in, even if there was no heat on and it was cool outside. This is in a very large bedroom with a 14-foot ceiling. I've been prone to issues with depression and anxiety since my childhood years, and even though I love that beautiful building, living in it was not good for me. Even when we weren't stressed out about weird stuff happening there, we fought a lot more when living there. We got sick a lot more and had just plain bad luck. My fiance had to go back on medication for depression for the first time since before we moved in. We learned at some point that the house had once functioned as a halfway house for psychiatric patients transitioning out of a huge sanitarium that had been open nearby from 1910 to 2001. The sanitarium was called Chestnut Lodge. About 3 months before we moved into that house, the abandoned Chestnut Lodge building burned down and collapsed. A developer ended up buying the land and building very expensive housing on it, calling the development Chestnut Lodge after the facility. Apparently, the sanitarium was an inspiration for I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. We didn't find out until we were moving out a couple of years later that the scary upstairs neighbor originally moved in as one of the last halfway house patients. My mother-in-law sold the house a while back, but it took over a year on the market to finally get bought out. What is this Chestnut Lodge? Let me look it up. Okay, so apparently the Chestnut Lodge was built in 1886. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put a picture of what the sanitarium looked like. Okay, so this is the last story for today's video, guys. We bought a 50s bungalow a few years ago. The original owner had passed and we were the first people to live there since. My daughter's bedroom was on the far side of the house from mine and was always colder than the rest of the house. We chalked it up as poor insulation in that room. Every night I would hear her talking to someone. Just thought it was baby sleep babbling. She was about 2 at the time. Then she started talking to someone in the daytime too. I asked her about it and she told me it was the blue-faced mommy. The mommy wanted to play peekaboo with her all the time and she wouldn't leave her alone. She said she would wake her up in the night to play peekaboo. It freaked the shit out of me. I talked about it with one of the older ladies in the neighborhood who knew the original family. Apparently, their older daughter had suffocated herself in the house after giving birth to a stillborn child. Not sure how she suffocated herself. The neighbor didn't have a lot of details, but it happened in the early 70s. I am certain that she was the blue-faced mommy my daughter was talking about. A friend told me she had read the best way to deal with lingering spirits was to politely ask them to leave. So one night when my girl was woken up, I went to her room and politely said, "Please, ma'am, your family has moved away. We need you to go now." And after that, nothing. I still get chills thinking about it. That's all for now. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I got chills. That is so sad though. She just wanted to play with a baby because she lost her baby. That is very, very sad. All right, guys, so these are the stories for today. Let me know which story was your favorite. Personally, I really enjoyed the one with the Chestnut Lodge. I thought that was very creepy. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.